Will happen. Hey, welcome to Brisbane Small Business Show. This is Kevin Gamming. I've got with me Carly Clark. Carly is truly amazing. I promise you, she is far more mature than she looks. She's been doing what she's been doing for 14 years. And I've got to say, that would put her in my estimation as one of the pioneers of doing this, because social media really only occurred, really only started Facebook 2003. Wasn't really popular until about the times that we're talking about. So really cool that you could come on and join us and share some tips in relation to content. But as I discussed with you before, I asked you a question. Since when has content been important? And you said it's always been important. I said, no, it hasn't.
So yeah, thank you. I think content has been important, but in a totally different, like you were saying, it was really targeted at large businesses, so people with the money to splash. So I think you're absolutely right. Content in the small business world has become extremely economical and also really, really achievable for little to no cost. So I think that's definitely what's changed.
Absolutely, and don't worry, I'm wrong about a whole host of other things, but I just thought we'd like to play, we actually had to go back to the 60s when content wasn't that important. In reality, with the rise of social media, it's given small business the opportunity to compete with large business, because now they have, they can get to a mass audience very cheaply.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all these tools that are out there for us are being really targeted towards small businesses. So the mums and dads with the cafes is really the target market for particularly things like new tools Facebook are bringing out, Facebook Shops, which is a brand newie, which I think is current climate taking everything online. People aren't walking into the stores anymore, so we're really having to encourage that online space as much as we can.
Absolutely. And the really cool thing that I find about this is big business are hitting Facebook like there's no tomorrow. And a greater variety of big business. McKinsey's, I keep bringing up this example because I'm absolutely almost mesmerized by the fact that McKinsey & Co., the world's largest business consultancy firm, dealing with, probably 487 of the Fortune 500 companies, they're advertising, they're smashing Facebook like it's going out of fashion, right? If big businesses like that are doing it, surely everyone else should be.
Absolutely. And I think there are some ways that you can do it by spending money, but there are also a lot of ways where you don't actually have to spend money. And a couple of the tips I've got today can kind of show you exactly how you can do that. Obviously, there's effort behind it. Obviously, you have to plan. There's a lot that does go into it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be money all the time.
And in reality, we're not trying to get as big a reach as McKinsey & Co. And look, I'm going to encourage people to think about investing some money into it, because without that, your reach is going to be very small. The other example that I give every other day is, Frank Walker from National Tiles. We hate his voice, but we all know exactly who he is because he's in front of us all the time. But there's ways that we can be in front of people all the time fairly inexpensively. So how did you get into, I said that you started in 2006, right? So how did you get into the whole world of content and social media and stuff?
Yeah, so I graduated as a graphic designer and I started working for a really small marketing agency. And everyone knows in small agencies, it's all hands on deck. So I worked with all areas of the business, HR, accounts, but I was also working on actually marketing that business and trying to find new clients. And I think, being the new kid, and I was younger than everyone else, I was trying to find new innovative ways to come up with ways to market basically the business I worked for. And some worked, some didn't. It's all trial and error. It still is. Some things work, some things don't. But yeah, it was just really interesting to kind of see it from that perspective, being inside the business looking out.
Absolutely. Look, I love the story. So the new kid, hey, there's this new thing, social media. See if that's got any legs. You run with that. Give us some feedback in another year's time. And here you are today. You've got your own business. Absolutely fantastic. Congratulations. You've moved all around. You've come to Brisbane.
I have.
Why Brisbane?
Sunshine, basically. I think the ease of the city. I just love how easy it is to move around and find where you're going and all of that kind of stuff.
Apart from the last couple of months, of course, but yes.
No, I haven't been anywhere for the last couple of months, really. So yeah, I think it was really a lifestyle choice. It had nothing to do with business, but being digital and being virtual, I could pick up the business and move it, and it wasn't a problem.
Absolutely. It's still nice to deal with other people that are local so that you can catch up and have a coffee and do all that sort of stuff now that we're allowed to do that sort of stuff again, which is absolutely fantastic. Next week I'll start booking I'll start booking business meetings in cafes and things. I haven't done that yet. But yeah, people can get really seduced by the inexpense or by the volume or how wide they can spread their message on social media. But you have to be very strategic to actually get a message out there consistently enough that's going to make an impact. Hey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why the planning part of it is so important. A lot of people kind of skip over the planning part and then just start posting things, and none of it's making sense. There's not a campaign that may be running for the lead up to something, and all of those things are so important to actually get the biggest impact that you can possibly when your special's running or when your sale's running. So it is really important, that planning part of it, I think, and knowing that you don't need to post every day. I think that's like one of my biggest tips in this space, is because everyone thinks I've got to just post all the time and I've got to have less. Really is more a lot of the time. Good quality, juicy content that people are going to want to read is what you want to put out, rather than kind of flaky all the time, if that makes sense.
Yes and no. Can I say yes and no?
Sure.
So I'm going to agree with you. Absolutely, less is more. Do you need to post all the time? Not all the time, but regular enough so that people will remember you. Okay.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But the beauty about social media is we can't remember what happened 3 days ago, let alone 3 months ago. So you don't need to be constantly producing new content all the time. I think this is what you're saying, but have some high quality hero pieces that then you can share on a regular basis, because what I read 3 weeks ago, hey, this sounds really familiar to what I read 3 weeks. It could be the exact same article, but it just sounds familiar. Right. On the third time, I might even recognize that it comes from Carly and reach out and go, hey, that was truly awesome, Carly.
Yeah, that's right. And I think as well, tailoring each channel, so it can seem as though it is a slightly different piece of content, or you've taken a new, tone of voice with it. So people are actually seeing it, oh, this looks interesting, and they click on it again, depending what audience you are, posting to.
Absolutely. So really what we're talking about specifically is that planning your social content interaction to make sure that you're most effective in relation to that.
That's right. And I think also the other things that go in the background, like email marketing and blog posts and updating your website, all these things are things that come along with this. So if not everything else is going on in the background and somebody goes to your website and it's really outdated, that's your social media post is going to be irrelevant, really. What you're trying to do is really drive that, website traffic, and you're really trying to kind of, get people to understand who you are and what your story is.
Am I looking really embarrassed right now?
I don't know. Are you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely I am. So it's all part of one big picture. So absolutely, everybody, don't go rushing to the Growth Mentors website. Just go to Business Small Business. You'll have everything you need there. It's far better. So you've got 5 steps to both save time and maximize your impact. Yeah.
I do, absolutely. So the first one I mentioned earlier was less is more. So the less is more thing, like I said, it doesn't mean you shouldn't post often. It just means you need to be consistent. So if you produce one piece of content, you can share that 5 times across different channels with a different tone of voice. And it's going to have a different impact with each of those audiences. So I think that that's one of my top tips, if you will. The next thing is you really need.
So what you mean by that? So rather than rushing, we don't have to rush. Rather, what you mean by that is you don't need to be producing new content all the time, but produce a few quality pieces that you can reutilize. And as I said, what you posted 3 months ago, so nobody remembers right now.
No, that's
which
it.
is fantastic.
The other thing, which is quite a cool thing, is I do quite often is, say you have your 5 tips and you write it as one blog post. You could do that as one, or you could split it up into the 5 tips, and there you've got 5, pieces of content basically that people are going to interact with differently across different times, different channels. So, you don't need to just spending lots and lots of time creating this content. You really can try and utilize one piece many different ways.
Which is truly, that's truly cool by the time you get to doing that, because it knows, and it leads into your next point, which is, what was it again?
Audience. That's my next point. Know your audience.
Yes, because if you know your audience, you'll understand all the different challenges they're having, but there'll be just a handful of key challenges that they keep, that are the triggers that bring them to you. Mm-hmm. And so they're the things that are going to fall under your umbrella piece, or whatever you call it. What do you call it? Is it umbrella piece?
A hero piece usually. Yeah, so usually in a month, say you might have 3 hero pieces. They don't all have to be blogs. It could be a portfolio piece. It could be a case study. There's lots of different things that you can do as far as types of content.
Sorry, you used a term that I didn't understand, portfolio piece.
Yeah, so that's showing your work. So particularly if you're in the service industry, it can be a really nice thing to actually show the work that you've done. It works really well with tradesmen as well. So actually showing the before and after of a piece of work you've done. Shops do it all the time with their products. Obviously, it's very easy to do that with products. But service-based businesses kind of struggle a little bit more to find exactly what they can show. So there's before and afters of really good content, and people love them. People love to say, oh, it's like, look at it then. I could do that with my house. It's amazing. So, yeah.
And that lets you tell the whole story of the journey and all that sort of stuff within the content. Remember, the other thing that we kind of brushed over, when we talk about content, you and I had this discussion, but we forgot to have it with everyone else. We are talking about blogs, we're talking about videos, even podcasts, information that you want to help people with. That's content. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was my fault for rushing earlier on, so I do apologize. So knowing your audience, and the more you know your audience, what do you need to know about them? Basically,
the number one thing you need to know is what they struggle with, or what their question is, or what's missing for them. That's usually the best way to understand how you can find the answer or fill the gap of what it is that's missing for them. I also like to, particularly with my audience, I segment. Segmentation in an audience can be confusing, but I recommend you only segment, say, 1, 2, or 3 audiences. You wouldn't do any more than that. It gets too way over the top. And what ends up happening there is that you may have a bunch of small businesses that are struggling with this sort of problem. They may be really small and might be finding ways to grow their business. And then you get the small to medium-sized businesses that have a whole other issue. So you're just wanting to segment them so you can be having different conversations with them. That's really all that segmentation's about.
Absolutely. So bring it into Brisbane small business language. If we were to try and start segmenting our audience, it's been really clear through COVID. We've kind of got three different parts to our community. Okay, we've got the community that have strong businesses, they have a team and everything else. They may have been affected by COVID, but there's a team and they've got a turnover, probably $500,000 plus, and there's that. We've got the next, which has a micro team, and they may have either one income producer or just a couple of like-minded souls that have banded together. And so there's that style of thing. And then we do have the people who are working by themselves. And and they may have a turnover under the 75 grand, and the government is kind of ignoring them at the moment. They just don't know how they can help and make it worthwhile for the government, and that's the challenge that they have here. So, putting them in clear buckets, or putting your audience in clear buckets like that, will help you have a slightly different conversation, as you're saying.
Absolutely, yeah, that's exactly right, and I think that's why you mentioned it, the government support for that middle, helping them really kind of take their business to the next level, being able to do that training that they didn't do before, or spend a little bit more on advertising or marketing. There's lots of different things that they could do, so it's very exciting for businesses who can apply.
Absolutely. You do have to get applications in really, really fast. I know that at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, they'd had, I think it was 4,300 applications already. I didn't get a chance to look before we got on this morning, but I'm imagining it's jumped up. If you're thinking about trying to apply for the adaptation grant, jump in fast. That's one of the reasons we're having this conversation. So knowing your audience, and if you want to get really technical, start putting them into buckets or segment them into different groups that have common challenges.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. But you need lots of people, don't you?
Well, you need the right people. So I think that a lot of the time people think, oh, I have to have this really great following. But if you have every single person that likes your Facebook page or follows you on Instagram is your perfect client, then it doesn't matter how big or small it is, really. You want to obviously keep growing it, which leads me to my next point, list building. So
it was a segue.
You love a segue. I thought you might. So a list building should be happening all the time. It should be on your website in some way, shape, or form. You should be collecting people's email addresses to be able to market to them, basically. And to do this, you do want to give something back. I also recommend, giving them something for their email address is always a nice thing. So they're called list builders. And usually it's a free resource or a free tool that you can create that basically they can download, or you can send to them via email once they have signed up to your newsletter. And it's a really nice way to get good people that have engaged in your resources, mean that they're probably going to be a client that you're going to want to work with. And so then they're part of your audience and you can speak to them directly, which is a really nice way to build.
And there's so many different tools for list building, but the main one is you will need to have a database.
Yeah.
Right? You will need to have a CRM of some description so that you can do that. Look, you can do it through your traditional get people to click here and go off to your landing pages and that sort of stuff. You can do it through chatbots. You can do it through a host of different ways. But the really important thing is that you have to be able to capture the information.
Absolutely. And for it to be in the one spot, so you don't have that back end administration that can be a nightmare where it's being captured in different places. It happens all the time. So making sure it's going, you're understanding where your audience is so you can speak to them.
Absolutely. So we've organised how to capture the audience so that we can follow them up professionally. We don't want to spam people, but we do want to follow them up professionally. We know who we're talking to. We've got some great hero pieces of content and everything else. What's the next thing we need?
The next thing is basically consistency. So a lot of people get very energetic at the beginning and they plan and they've got this, everything's in place and it's great. And then all of a sudden they have a really busy month or a busy week, or they, go on holiday and it sort of falls by the wayside. So my tip is to basically batch schedule your social media and or whatever content you are putting out, whether that be blog or what have you. So once a month you sit down and you write everything for the month, and then you schedule it out and it's done. You don't have to think about it. It's all just going to happen. And you can do obviously the ad hoc ones in between when, you know, everyone likes to kind of add in their own little message here and there, but it means that the body of that content is really going to be out there without you having to every single, you know, 3 times a week or whatever it is that you're posting, sit and do it. So it's just a much easier way to get it all done and all planned.
Absolutely. No, look, and having that plan and having it scheduled out is such an important thing. I do feel I'm getting a little bit more embarrassed as we keep going further down this list, and you know, we'll talk about my situation another day. Because if you schedule it out appropriately, then you give yourself the opportunity to build the momentum in the story. If you think about your Marcona ads, right? Your Marcona coffee ads, right? They start with the whole boy meets girl, and there's something, and then it gets to the, you know, the chase or the, and all of a sudden he turns up at the door and yay, you know. They can tell that story because they schedule each part of the story. They don't tell it all at once.
Yep.
And that's a really critical tool, is make sure that you give yourself the opportunity to build momentum.
Yeah.
And if you're scheduling it, like you're saying, then you have that opportunity.
Yeah, you're seeing it all in front of yourself rather than just doing it in a very reactive way, which is a lot of ways that people post. Oh, this thing happened, I better post it. Oh, I did this. Oh, we have a sale, let's do that. And rather than actually planning it out and making it purposeful, I think, as well.
Absolutely. No, I love that whole, let's plan it, let's schedule it, let's know when things are coming. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I love it. There is one final point.
There is, and you do this very well, Kevin. So I'm going to use you as the example. So showing your face. Now, a lot of small business owners / whoever they are really hate getting their face on social media. But everyone knows your face, Kevin. Everyone knows you as the face of Brisbane Small Business. And the reason is because you show your face. You're on screen all the time. We see it where it's recognizable with your brand. So I think this is why I'm using you as an example. I hope you don't mind. But
we didn't talk about this.
Just throw it on you. I thought you'd love it though. So, you know.
Look, I've actually aced 1 out of 5. I love it.
And that's the thing that is so people then associate your face with a brand and it becomes personal. You don't want a brand that's clinical. You don't want a brand that nobody understands what is going on behind the scenes. And just by showing where your office is or what you're doing today, getting on a Facebook Live, getting on an Instagram stories, whatever it might be, it can be really simple, short, and it's so easy to do. You can turn your phone on wherever you are and just, you know, a 5-minute live is all it takes, really.
So I'm going to give a confession to everyone here right now.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I hated it.
Yeah.
Right, I'm like everyone else, and at first, and I was doing my backyard insights, you know, going back 2 years ago, and I really hate it. So my best mate is quite a successful businessman. He's got, you know, a multi-million-dollar business and everything like that. And we were sitting down having coffee the other day, and he said, "Kevin, I've got to tell you, when you first started doing, you know, your live stuff, you were crap." I went, "Oh, thanks,
he's
mate."
He's a good friend, though. No, he's giving you.
Only your friends will tell you, won't they? He said, "But look, you've improved. You're okay now." Right. So that's where he got to. I was okay now. So look, you don't have to be awesome. And yes, you're going to be nervous. And I know some of the people that I've talked to on these shows are really nervous, and I appreciate that. And I will carry on and play the fool because it's important that their message gets across, that your message gets across. Yeah. And that's, I'm trying to make it a little entertaining so that people watch the message as well, right? So I know that I'm not always good, and some of my shows I've done so many bad mistakes. So please, in showing your face, be prepared to make the mistakes. People will forget them really quickly, apart from your mate who'll tell you were crap at the start.
Yeah, exactly. And you learn from it. I think that's the biggest thing. If you don't do it, you're never going to get better at it. So jump in, show your face.
Yeah. Don't And that's my message to you is don't be scared to do this. Don't wait for it to be perfect.
Yeah.
Even these small business shows, my concept was that they'd be, 10 minutes long, and we're at 25 minutes now.
Yeah.
We'll improve one day. But the importance is that if you wait for it to be perfect, you'll still be waiting in 6 months' time.
That's absolutely right.
Get out there and have a go.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you can do.
Absolutely. Look, Carly, I want to thank you. So what's your business called?
The Creative Assistant.
There you go. So we have Carly, the creative assistant. She's got an absolute awesome strategy. I'm sure that she does have a link with a download somewhere that she can type in.
Yes.
She's going to type them in the comments for everyone. And I'm sure she's even going to reuse this video from time to time. I want to thank you for joining the directory, being part of the community, and being prepared to come on and share your tips with the community. Thanks so much.
No, thank you. It was great. Thanks, Kevin.
And I'll find this end screen button in a second. Thanks, guys. I'll catch you later.
Bye.